Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
A shocking House betrayal. Anti-ICE protesters go to church. Justice is coming, says Tom Holman on Fox. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. I'm Sam Bushman. This is the one and only Liberty RoundTable Live. Dr. Scott Bradley's with me. freedomsrisingsun.com. Check out his incredible collegiate series to preserve the nation. Also sign up for his weekly webinars, Q&As on the Constitution and more every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Sign up today at freedomsrisingsun.com. Doctor, welcome back, sir. Hope you had a delightful weekend.
Yeah, I think it worked out pretty good. It's nice to get a kind of change of venue sometimes a little bit. They always say a change is as good as a rest. Even if you're doing a lot of things that keep you really busy, it's still kind of a recharging, How about you?
Amen. Yeah, so if you spend time with loved ones and families, you kind of relax, eat together, play a little games, discuss some religious topics or, topics that people like, kind of get caught up on what people are doing, make a few phone calls for ministering to others and everything else. Yeah, it might have been a busy day, but it was a respite from the week, from the politics, from the work, from all that stuff. But now it is Monday, which means we got to get right back to it, ladies and gentlemen. So on Sunday, yesterday, a group of anti-ICE, they call them protesters, but I don't believe they're protesters. We'll get into that in a minute. They entered a church in Minneapolis during worship because they believe one of the pastors there was an ICE agent. It went crazy. Check this out. We'll talk about it.
So you can see the protesters here have gathered over here. They're in the middle of the church. In the beginning of the church service, the pastor was speaking, and Nakima stood up and said her piece, and then the protesters surrounded her. But this is a clandestine mission. I think they found out according to them, this is according to Operation Pull-Up, that one of the pastors here is a member of ICE. And so here we go.
You could talk to the lead pastor.
Yeah. Let me show you. Okay. So you can see the protesters.
Several problems with this, Dr. Bradley, that I see. Number one, these are not protesters. Okay? You don't even have a right to protest if you want to go study the Constitution. Look at the Bill of Rights, Amendment 1. You have the right to peacefully assemble. You don't have the right to literally take over a church and create a flat-out riot, surrounding people, intimidating people, going into buildings without permission or authority, with no intention of worshiping or being involved in the church, but literally to riot and cause havoc and confusion and fear. And I mean, this is out of control, Dr. Bradley.
Well, it is the right to peaceably is the word, assemble. And it looked to me like there was a lot of disruption going on there, and particularly this idea of prohibiting the free exercise of religion too. Now, of course, they weren't doing it, in a manner that was exercising they may claim that they can come in and protest and everything, but they're not doing it peaceably, and they're interfering with the right of assembly of others, an association of others, and the idea of coming in. And to me, it's really an interesting dynamic. See, what they do is they set aside almost every single principle that's, freedom-based, and twist it into an excuse. Now, so is it okay for people because they are by their decision, their judgment, whatever, that somebody is talking about something that they're not interested in? Well, if you can disrupt and cause havoc anytime in your mind someone has a different opinion than you, we're pretty far down the tubes here, people. I think they've flushed it, and it's going down the drain.
So the problem with this is, if you go to church and you really intended to worship there, and I don't know how liberal or conservative or whatever the church is, don't care, because it's not germane to my point, my argument, and you're going there to peacefully worship, that's a peaceful assembly, doctor. But when you literally go into this church with an intent to intimidate, they literally surrounded this person. They're literally rioting. This is not a protest. You don't even have a right to protest. I know people claim you do, but you don't. And you say, well, Sam, come on now. You're playing games. A peaceful protest and a peaceful assembly is the same thing. No, it's not. Because a peaceful assembly says we're gathering together and we're going to have something focused on what we agree on. We're going to make our points, whether it be a worship service, whether it be a peaceful assembly for political reasons, whatever it be. The people there are in agreement for the most part. They may disagree, but do so politely. When you start bordering on intimidation, when you start bordering on the only reason I'm there is to disrupt, you have left the peaceful assembly situation, and now you're in this protest idea. You know, they say peaceful protesters. I don't believe there's a such thing as a peaceful protester, because you say, well, these people are peaceful, but what about the other guy that just, destroyed a cop car? Or what about, did they do any damage to the church? Or what about, do you have permission to even be in the church for that matter? I assume the church is private property. So, we cross all kinds of boundaries, and then the mainstream press and everybody else says, see, the protesters this, the protesters that. No, these are rioters. These are flat out clown disruptors with intent funded for division.
Well, this is
Doctor,
absolutely.
Am I off base on this?
No, it's a Marxist philosophy, and I mean, whether you're a Nazi, any kind of fascist, whether you're a Marxist or any kind of social democrat kind of guy, it's interesting how they are co-opting the phrases of liberty and using them to destroy liberty. And let's just spin the shoe a little bit here, wear it on a different foot, whatever you want to call it. What if it was a black gospel revival kind of thing with the black pastor and the gospel singers and all of that energy and everything else like that? You come into those kind of situations, and the KKK showed up. I mean, what's the difference? How far different is it? I mean, and a lot of people say, well, I can see that's a problem, and they try and go this way. No, people are just having their lives disrupted by people that for some reason think they have ascendancy over the rest of us, and they're going to come in and impose their viewpoint violently, perhaps even. This very easily could have turned
this
quite
is
violent.
rioting. This isn't protesting. I think the people that went into the church with that intent, and that's the problem, is you start getting into the thought police. You start getting, when we start talking intent, that's a problem, because I'm not here to debate people's intent, but I am here to say at some point it becomes a problem when we just decide, well, they're blurring all these lines to where it's impossible to even know where to stand almost on this, except for I say these rioters need to be arrested.
Yeah, I think they're out of line in every way, but you talk about knowing where to stand. I had a lot of thoughts last evening about, people that I've cared about for decades that have been involved in the freedom fight and everything. And this is becoming so contentious, so conflicting, so nuanced in the arguments that I feel like sometimes some of these people, I can hardly go in a room and talk to people because they're so intensely focused with great acrimony on a very specific, nuanced position that everybody's, it's kind of like, I don't know, when I was a kid, we watched a lot of cowboy movies. And I always wondered why sometimes in a cowboy movie, you go in and they're in a bar room and somebody throws a punch and suddenly everybody else is breaking chairs over everybody else's heads and throwing bottles and breaking mirrors and being tossed through windows. And it's kind of like, heavens, this was a disagreement between two people and you've turned it into an entire riot. And that's kind of where we are right now in America. There's just so many different kind of, like I say, nuanced positions, and people that, unfortunately, very few people are willing to do the research to go give this consideration. And it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction that sometimes happens. And pretty soon you're in a barroom brawl. What was a decision, a church, for crying out loud, in this particular case. So it's really, really strange. There's a great deal of success in the application of this Marxist fascist approach to overthrow society. You divide, you get conflict, it's conflict-based, you split the groups, you fractionalize, and pretty soon it gets to the point where there's so much everything's disheveled and out of place, and good people that I know are arguing vehemently one way or the other, and pretty soon somebody's saying, wait, we got a better idea. We got a solution to this thing, and it's bigger government, more tyranny, regardless of how you paint it.
Every time. So the problem is the general government really, in my mind, doesn't belong in Minnesota at all. The local sheriff there needs to get a handle on this. Those who violate peaceful involvement, in other words, are there against the wishes of those who lead the church, they need to be clearly arrested. When we get back, let's talk about this more, ladies and gentlemen. This is serious, because I got a question. Are we going to bump up against the Insurrection Act? And is the Donald going to crack down hard? That's what they say is coming. Hold on.
You know where the solution can be found, Mr. President? In churches, in wedding chapels, in maternity wards across the country and around the world. More babies will mean forward-looking adults, the sort we need to tackle long-term, large-scale problems. American babies in particular are likely going to be wealthier, better educated, and more conservation-minded than children raised in still industrializing countries. As economist Tyler Cowen recently wrote, quote, "By having more children, you're making your nation more populous, thus boosting its capacity to solve climate change. The planet does not need for us to think globally and act locally so much as it needs us to think family and act personally. The solution to so many of our problems, at all times and in all places, is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids."
Looking for an IT partner that truly understands your needs? Managed IT Services is the answer. We meet with you regularly to discuss your goals and form a tailored technology plan. Our customers have called us a trusted advisor who delivers. When it comes to IT, we do it all. Firewalls, cloud storage, server migration, and more. Say goodbye to long-term contracts and hello to a team that earns your business month after month. Call 801-706-6980 now and let Managed IT Services transform your IT experience.
Have you ever had great honey? No, I mean really good, all-natural, raw honey? Well, now you can, thanks to localhoneyman.com. We can ship out our locally made honey all across the U.S. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Plus, Local Honeyman has so many different flavors, like Utah Wildflower, High Desert Delight, Happy Valley, and Blackberry, just to name a few. So purchase your delicious raw honey today at localhoneyman.com.
A bunch of out-of-control rioting thugs literally went into a church in Minnesota and caused nothing but havoc and intimidation. They're calling it protesting. They act like it's peaceful, but that's a blatant lie. They're trying to acclimate you for violence, ladies and gentlemen. Don't fall for the dishonest manipulation. You have a constitutional, God-given, inalienable right to peacefully assemble. That is true. You don't have the right to go in a church unwelcome with an agenda to disrupt the worship. If you want to have your own event to peacefully assemble and have a redress of your grievance or focus on your issues, by all means, you can assemble somewhere else in a private venue, get a permit, whatever it takes, and you can have your own event. But when you disrupt this church because you think that an ICE agent's at the church and you intimidate and everything else, so it's not a surprise to me that the government's going to crack down. I don't really believe the general government belongs in this, but I do think that the local sheriff needs to take serious action. And I believe, we really need to get a handle on this. I think people need to be arrested. We also need to find out where their funding's coming from. That's being done right now, though. Okay, justice is coming, says Mr. Tom Holman. He's talking about who is funding the ICE protesting. Fox News had the piece over the weekend while this riot was going on. Here's Tom Holman.
The Minnesota politicians will say often, as Fry does, and we're going to get into him a little bit later on, but Fry and Waltz, they'll say, well, we want calm. We want the temperature to come down. And then they egg on the violence. They continue to do this night after night. And as you saw, Tom, it's getting worse night after night.
It is, and just before I got in front of the camera, my security team advised me that the person that stole that farm last night is now wearing a set of handcuffs in custody. So I was just advised of that before I got on the camera. So, and there's others, others are coming. So they're going to be held accountable. But you're right. Look, Mayor Fry and the governor could end this right now. They could say, ICE, we want to work with you. ICE, we want to let you into our jails, and we're going to, respect your detainers. Any illegal alien that we book into a jail, when we're done with them, we're going to call you. So you can arrest them in the safety and security of a jail rather than us releasing them to the street. Then you got to send a whole team to look for them. They could fix the situation right now, because as of right now, what are these... these anarchists, what do they have achieved so far? What have they achieved? Has ICE decreased their operations? No, we doubled down. We're arresting people every day and we'll keep doing it. They haven't achieved anything other than violence.
Well, Tom, I also think what's clear here is that the money trail has to be dried up. That has to be exposed. I know there's some reporting around the edges about some foundations, perhaps connected to billionaires we've been talking about, are giving some type of support for some of these groups that may filter into these protests. But the idea that this is some organic uprising is ludicrous. I was there. It was obvious. It was not organic.
Well, you're exactly right. And there's a deep dive right now between HSI, IRS, and FBI. We know there's organized groups. We know there's funding. And we're doing a deep dive right now to identify them, follow the money, and find out who's organizing this, who's inciting the violence. And justice is coming their way. So we're all over this. We just had increased number of attorneys to Minnesota, number of agents. But there's a separate part of that. We're looking at the financials. We're looking at who's funding this, who's antagonizing this, and they'll be held accountable, Laura. We're all over it. You should hear something real soon.
When Governor Walz said for citizens to track ICE, film them, and record their, quote, atrocities for future prosecution, and then you hear the Philly police chief look like a comedy sketch when she was up there talking about, we'll arrest ICE if we have to. We'll arrest the agents. If you come into our town, you're going to get arrested, essentially. I'm paraphrasing.
So you literally got Dr. Scott Bradley. You've literally got the government in Minnesota, the mayor, the governor, literally saying, yeah, we're going to arrest ICE agents, literally allowing these criminals to riot. Tom Holman and company trying to discover the funding. I don't know why they're at the discovery stage for the funding, because they've had this happen with Chaz in Seattle. They've had this happen with Charlottesville. They've had this happen with Michael, whatever the guy's name was. They've seen these riots go on for years now, and it's really the same people and the same funders that are behind this intentional criminal agitation. So your thoughts? Why are we just starting to look into it now? I mean, I appreciated it. It may be different funding than before, but you should be able to quickly connect the dots in this stuff, number one. Number two, how come people aren't being arrested, though? I mean, literally, you want the mayor and the governor to arrest ICE agents while these, psychotic people are funded and literally riot in the streets and riot in churches. And we better get a handle on this quicker or we're going to have a civil war, sir. I pray it's not true, but I'm telling you, this could escalate beyond that in 2 seconds.
I remember well the riots of the 60s for the civil rights and the anti-Vietnam stuff. The George Floyd stuff should be pretty fresh on people's minds from just a few years ago, when I think the level of acrimony, the violence, the nationwide status of things during the George Floyd years were far more difficult than where they currently are. And it seems to me like there's I don't know. It's like we're always just in a learning curve. We're way behind it. Holman seemed to me like he's saying, oh, it's coming. Well, it never comes. We never do get to the bottom of these things. That's kind of a weird thing.
What do you think should happen? Donald Trump talking about the Insurrection Act being used against these government officials that are literally enabling. They're enablers to these rioting thugs.
The Insurrection Act is really very problematic in so many ways. I believe at this particular juncture, we're way below what would be a justifiable implementation of the Insurrection Act. I believe that A lot of the things that are happening are being triggered by Trump policies, by Trump's toadies, henchmen, whatever you want to call them. I mean, it seems really kind of disrespectful maybe to use that terminology, but it seems like there needs to be a kind of a cooling off period. I mean, look what they keep doing whenever there's stuff going on in the Middle East someplace, or protesters in Iran, and the challenges that come up in different communities in the Middle East. And sometimes they take a step back, dial it back, and have a cooling off period, whereas cooler heads can prevail. And I think that we're way past that right now. I think Holman's talking about moving battalions, not literally, but almost, of troops into American cities. And I remember the days.
They're literally talking about one division of the Army, literally on in waiting, 1,500 of them to roll in there if needs be.
Oh, absolutely, the case. And I remember the challenges that happened when the people were questioning the Vietnam War. Their questions were very valid in most cases. It was an unconstitutional action. Thousands, tens of thousands of Americans were dying. Millions of people were dying. And there was these protests on the war, and you say, oh, well, see, I was in during that time. And they activated a lot of people. I never, stood in arms against the American people, but I remember this moratorium on the war situation that happened in Washington, D.C. And one guy I knew had just got back from Vietnam, and he was standing in formation at the Jefferson Memorial, and he'd seen the ugliness of war and what was happening in Southeast Asia, and he was thinking about marching against his fellow citizens. I mean, American troops, some of, including this individual that I knew, he started throwing up. I mean, it was that nauseating to him to think this. And all we do is we keep throwing more and more armor. We've got armored vehicles, MRAPs, mine-resistant ambush.
Militarize everything on the local level. That's a serious problem with posse comitatus. Yeah. The Insurrection Act I don't think we're there yet by any means, but these public officials are literally out of line when they say they're going to arrest ICE agents. On the other hand, you look at this, and I want to compare it to an event I was just at recently, a week and a half ago. We went to a church event in Washington, Puyallup, Washington, right outside of Tacoma, and we had a church, and we had a big event. Over 400 people were there. We had a lot of security because we had several people there. Sheriff Richard Mack was there. The current sheriff of the county was there by the name of Keith Swank, and we're defending the office of sheriff, and we had it at a church. Well, here's the interesting thing. The sheriff led the security team. They worked with General Michael Flynn's security. They worked with a few other security people that came because there was a lot of different leaders there. Patrick Byrne had security. Several of us had security. They all basically got in a room and worked together with the sheriff's department. They had a lot of protesters there. There was well over 100 protesters that were outside of this church. But because we had security so dialed in, nothing happened. The protesters were outside. They protested. We literally went out and talked to them to see what their grievances were or what their concerns were. They were pretty mellow. They were peaceful. And all I'm telling you is that is a comparison. I think you don't need the federal government involved. You don't need to go to the Insurrection Act. You can deal with this locally if you provide the security necessary. And you say, well, we can't provide security everywhere, Sam. I know. That's why you got to start arresting these protesters right off the streets. And you got to dig in and depose them and find out where are they getting their money. How did they get here? Are they from out of town? How many protests have they been at? Is this a kind of a job description for them? What's the details? And you can obtain all that locally very easily if you try. I want to dial it back. I don't think we need to go to the Insurrection Act. I don't think we need to go to cracking heads. And I think we can deal with this fairly easily if we learn how to do it responsibly. When we get back, we'll get Dr. Bradley's comments on this. And then we'll get to Keith Swank's comments. We'll talk about it. Liberty Roundtable live.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. In their drive to hunt down ICE agents, rioters in Minneapolis went as far as storming a church service yesterday. People even suspected of working for ICE enforcing federal immigration law are being harassed. Meanwhile, some pro-ICE demonstrators also got together over the weekend in Minneapolis-St. Paul. Demonstrations in Greenland over the weekend as President Trump is standing by his declaration that the U.S. must gain control of the strategically important Arctic island. The European Union is chiming in on Mr. Trump's threat of higher tariffs.
The EU is considering imposing 93 billion euros worth of tariffs on the United States, or restricting the access of American companies to the bloc's single market if Donald Trump makes good on his promise to impose tariffs on any country that gets in the way of his takeover of Greenland, a territory of Denmark. The EU's retaliatory measures are being prepared to give Brussels leverage in talks with the US president in Davos this week, where the EU hopes to reach some kind of compromise. France and Germany's finance ministers meet in Berlin today to establish a joint position.
The BBC's Katja Adler. Spanish police say at least 39 people have been confirmed dead in a high-speed train collision in southern Spain. The crash occurred last evening. A train from Malaga to Madrid derailed and then hit an oncoming train. Authorities still recovering bodies from the mangled wreckage of shattered glass and twisted steel. They say the death toll could rise. It was a bitterly cold and snowy weekend along a vast expanse of the East Coast, including in the heavily populated New York, New Jersey region. Wall Street and the bond markets are closed today for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It is a federal holiday. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Chuck McDowell here with Wesley Financial Group. My 78-year-old friend Linda called me yesterday. She bought a $40,000 timeshare in Nashville. She was told it was a great investment and that he would personally book all her vacations. All lies. She called our sales rep, Chris, the next morning at 4:57 a.m. to cancel, and she was told it was too late. You had your chance yesterday. Another lie. She has 10 days in Tennessee. Because people keep buying their lies, and they don't want me to help you. If you need a timeshare, I'm sure one of the 3,500 people that call my office weekly would love to give you one of theirs. Or go online and pay $1 for it. But stop paying $40,000 for lies. It's time to stop the insanity. Don't wait another day.
Call Wesley now for your free timeshare exit kit. 800-364-7711. That's 800-364-7711. 800-364-7711.
Authorities in...
As you are aware, America is divided over every fault line possible. This is intentionally fostered by those who do not love God, family, or country. We believe a peaceful future as a free people absolutely depends on civility. Clarion Call for Civility is looking for funding and volunteers at every level to make our hopes and efforts a reality. Please donate, sign our pledge, and help us in our sacred cause. Please visit callforcivility.com for more details. Callforcivility.com.
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of LNR's hard-hitting news and podcasts at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at libertynewsradio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. libertynewsradio.com.
The Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit legal foundation committed to protecting our unalienable right to publicly acknowledge God. The Foundation for Moral Law exists to restore the knowledge of God in law and government, and to acknowledge and defend the truth that man is endowed with rights not by our fellow man, but by God. The Foundation maintains a twofold focus. First, litigation within state and federal courts. Second, education, conducting seminars to teach the necessity and importance of acknowledging God in law and government. How can you help? Please make a tax-deductible contribution, allowing Foundation attorneys to continue the fight. You may also purchase various Foundation products as well at morallaw.org. Located in Montgomery, Alabama, the Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 founded by Judge Roy Moore. Please partner with us to achieve this important mission. morallaw.org.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. So we've highlighted these protesters that went to church with the only purpose of intimidation and disruption in Minnesota. It's a disgrace. We talked about Tom Holman and company saying justice is coming. Who's funding these anti-ICE protests, and they're digging into it. But we've had this go on literally for years, these crazy riots. Look at Seattle turning into Chaz, to make the point. They literally kicked the police out of their own police department, etc. I mean, it was disaster. Well, now we basically go to our event, which was a week ago, a little over a week ago. And that event was very peaceful. The protesters were there. There was well over 100 protesters. But they were peaceful because we had really, really tight, appropriate security. And I realize every church can't have that everywhere in the country. But remember, we're in Seattle, or the Seattle greater area there, where it's very, very liberal. They literally took over a section of Seattle and called it a different city and held it hostage for days on end. So this can be done, and we don't need the general government to do it, okay? It can be done on the local level. Sheriffs can do it. Now, police chiefs are appointed. They'll do the bidding of the mayor, the city manager, maybe a city commission of some kind, etc. But an elected county sheriff will pay attention to the people who elected them. Keith Swank, sheriff of Pierce County, Washington, highlights this point. They're trying to destroy the office of sheriff. They want to make the sheriffs, instead of elected, appointed. And then they want to decrease the functionality and responsibilities of a sheriff and actually turn them into paper pushers. This is serious. There's bills in the Washington State Legislative body right now for this purpose. Well, Keith Swank went and spoke to these people, and here's what he had to say.
Colleagues naively believe that they can come here and reason with you. They don't understand what's at stake here. They don't understand you like I do. You're going to pass this qualification bill for law enforcement, but you won't hold yourselves accountable. Therefore, I propose everyone who runs for an elected office go through a background check, a social media review, a polygraph, a psychological test. But Democrats, you won't agree to that because you have convicted felons who are elected officials here. I represent almost 1 million people, more than all of you combined here. Many more people. I wasn't elected chief of police. Being sheriff of Pierce County is much more than police work. Citizens reach out to me all the time regarding overreach of the government by you. Some say they finally have a voice because of me, and you want to silence it because I said transgender women are men. I said the truth. You want to give unelected bureaucracy the ability to decertify me and remove me from office because you don't agree with my speech. Just for the record, my deputies don't wear masks, but once you pass this law that they can't, I will not only allow them, but I will encourage them to do so just to see what you do. I don't recognize your authority to impose these controls over me, and when you try to remove me from office, thousands of Pierce County residents will surround the county city building in downtown Tacoma and will not allow that to happen. I hope it doesn't come to that, but I and they are prepared. Are you prepared? Finally, anyone who votes for this will never have an audience with this sheriff.
Thank you. Could I have you identify yourself for the record? I'm sorry,
right,
that is not what.
Stop it. They play games here, and he walks away, and then they make him come back and say, I'm Keith Swank, sheriff of Pierce County, Washington. And they're like, thank you. They know who he is. They just wanted to do that. But at the end of the day, this is what we're up against, Dr. Bradley. You've got sheriffs now trying to hold the line. He created a very appropriate, peaceful event in his county. He has held the protesters at bay all by himself. And the security teams of I'm going to say public figures, celebrities, whatever you want to call people like us, had security combined with the sheriff's security, combined with the church security, and it was a very peaceful event. But I'm telling you right now, what they want to do is get rid of the sheriff. Then you'll have police chiefs that do the bidding of the mayor and the governor. And think about what if that was the case in Minnesota. Then you would literally have law enforcement in bed with the governor and the mayor that would literally probably arrest ICE agents. You would have a literally civil war between governments right here in America if you're not very careful. I think Keith Swank dials it back a bit by saying, look, I don't want this, and I'm not going to play games with you guys. But at the same time, he's saying, I will hold the line if you force me to. Your thoughts?
You know, it's interesting. Bastiat talked about this back in 1850. a great little French guy that loved the American founding fathers. He was very attuned to the cause of liberty. Communism was sweeping across Europe. And he wrote a little book called The Law. You could sit down this afternoon and read it easily. And if you love liberty, you'll be cheering all the way through. But one of the things he talked about in there is when the people that have power in government create what he calls a legalized plunder kind of environment, where the things that they legalize are basically legal theft. Taking other people's private property and destroying, anything that has to do with liberty. And he has a little discussion there about the gendarmes. He's French, as I said, and that's police, so the police become facilitators of those that are holding power based upon their obtaining that. That's what's happening very often in large metropolitan areas. And what they're doing in many instances is putting police boards out that are there to dehorn, if you will, anything that might stand in the way of their theft. And I think Washington State is really far down that path. So are a lot of other states too. Minnesota's not that far off either. But neither's New York, and we could make a list, I guess. But the fact of the matter is, they have gained what they believe is control of the government, and they are now legalizing that which should be illegal, and they're making illegal that which should be legal. And that's kind of the problem we've got, is that people are seeking to obtain office in order to pull the levers of government. That's why we have constitutions to limit and bound the authority. They have checks and balances. They separate powers. They limit the power to those specifically enumerated. All of those things are what constitutions are about. And American civics has been so far remiss in teaching that through our school systems that virtually nobody understands that everybody that holds office has a limited amount of power to act within a scope, and that's it. So it's a whole mess right now because the American civics is so far off. And that's my concern, is that we, the people, are really responsible for the mess we got ourselves in, because we keep electing lessers, people that are there to pull the levers of government on behalf of some specific agenda that usually leads to larger, more powerful, more intrusive government. And that's kind of where we are in America today. And I suspect... And
we like to play the blame game where we say the Democrats are the cause of this. But remember, Homeland Security was created by George Bush and company. And George Bush said, hey, this is to stop the terrorism. And now think about it. That being used on the streets of America, even the army being employed. We shouldn't even have a standing army, by the way, constitutionally speaking. And so we've got a lot of problems here. It's top down on one hand. On the other hand, you don't really support that. On the other hand, hey, what do you do when you have mayors and governors and legislative bodies that are literally destroying the very fabric of America blatantly in your face? In Minnesota and in Washington State, very liberal states with real agendas to create Sharia law and everything else in America. And, we laugh and say that's not even possible. They're well on their way. They've learned to be kind and talk our talk to get elected. And then like Mondami and some of these other people, they change like a chameleon. Once they get elected, they're like, hey, I held to your values because that's what it took. But now I'm in charge, baby. And we're starting to see this kind of reckless abandon of anything that is constitutional, anything that focuses on checks and balances, anything that would dial government back and eliminate or reduce authority and increased for accountability is being tossed out the window. And I'm not really mad at Trump or Holman. I know what they're trying to do, and I think they have constitutional authority to do a lot of it. They don't have the right to bring the army in, though. And when Keith Swank speaks up, he's really telling the truth. He's saying, hey, I'm in charge here because the people elected me, and you guys want to take that away from us. And if we allow that to happen, folks, we'll be in a situation where law enforcement will be aligned with some of these deep state enemies of liberty that we have foolishly elected, Dr. Bradley.
Well, a lot of people get the impression that the sheriff is the knows-all, ends-all, be-all to this whole process, and the sheriff has limited power also. I mean, the delegated authority to a sheriff is specific, and the upholding of liberty is to be kept within those bounds. And so everybody needs to recognize that everybody has a boss, and we the people aren't even allowed, because we're in the majority, to compel behavior that destroys the individual rights of individuals. That's what republics are about, is to protect those kinds of things. So we all have a responsibility, and almost nobody is stepping up to that. The people have been remiss for so many years now that we're in a pretty big hurt right now. And it sounds like we've got to take a break, and we're running out of time, and it's an essential topic.
Introducing Managed IT Services from NPI. We offer top-notch data backup and recovery, email spam protection, and network security tailored to your needs and budget. With 20-plus years of experience in the medical field, our HIPAA-certified consultants know what it takes to protect sensitive information. Don't settle for less. Give us a call at 801-706-6980 and experience the difference with Managed IT Services. Remember, your IT support should be fast, efficient, and reliable.
Introducing PrepStartsNow.com, your ultimate guide to readiness and peace of mind. We offer practical preparedness tools, training, and education to take your family's household readiness to the next level. Browse the prep shop for essential products, check out our planning guides, and stay informed with our prep blog. Visit PrepStartsNow.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive offers, new products, and future events. Remember, preparedness begins with PrepStartsNow.com.
Yeah, this is David in engineering.
This is your wife in suburbia.
Oh, hi, hon. What's up?
How's the robot coming?
Well, it doesn't exactly respond to requests yet, but
Well, I know how frustrating that can be.
You do?
Uh-huh. I'm still waiting for my romantic lunch date.
Oh, yeah.
David.
Well, I must not have enough memory allocated.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
You know, your son said mama today.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Well, we'll have to have that sound chip changed to data.
Well, you could reprogram it yourself, you know.
I know. Hey, why don't we do it over lunch today?
Oh, you really are brilliant.
Thanks. You want me to bring the robot?
David.
He can order pasta in 11 languages.
Only if he pays for his own lunch.
Okay. Oh, don't forget to bring Chip.
I still wish we hadn't named him that.
Well, why? It beats general default.
Oh.
Family. Isn't it about time?
Do you know that a baby processes information 3 times faster than an adult?
An adult what?
Engineer. Funny.
I'll see you at noon.
I can't wait.
From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
All right, after a shocking House betrayal, the Obamacare expansion bill is in the Senate, where Democrats and some Republicans are scrambling to move it forward before public opposition increases. With the help of 17 Republicans in the House, they passed the expansion of Obamacare that includes funding for abortions. Folks, this is disaster. The 17 Republicans who voted for this thing: Brian Fitzpatrick, Virginia, Rob Bresnahan, Ryan McKenzie, Mike Lawler, Mike Carey, Monica LaCruz, Andrew Garabino, I think is how you say it, Jeff Hurd, Dave Joyce, Tom Keene Jr., Nick LaRoga, Max Miller, Zach Nunn, Maria Salazar, Dave Valandau, I think you say it, Derek Van Orden, Rob Whitman. Those are the ones who voted for it. The Republicans literally are going against Trump blatantly and going against, they said they wanted to get rid of Obamacare. They voted 40 times when they had no authority. Then when they got authority, they never voted to get rid of it. And now you got Republicans blatantly backing it. It already passed the House. They're working on the effort in the Senate. Doctor?
Well, we've been talking about this since about September 30th in a real intense way. It ramps up every time we bring the subject up. But the idea that they've got to extend these subsidies for Obamacare came front and center during the shutdown of the economy and the whole nation. And there was an awful lot of Republicans. In fact, I'm kind of shocked there was only 17 in the House that crossed the barrier. It's a blood-brain barrier. I guess their brains go dead. But at any rate, there were a lot of people that historically have said, we want to get rid of Obamacare. And now now what they're doing is they're expanding, and actually making even more destructive this whole process of what Obamacare is. Bottom line, government, read your Constitution carefully, has no authority whatsoever to redistribute wealth. None. I just got a text while we've been on the air from somebody that's fighting something in their own community. It has nothing to do with health care, but it has to do with government subsidies coming into their community and funding some things that I think are going to destroy the liberty in their community. But at any rate, there is no authority to redistribute wealth, take from one and give to another. There is no authority to authorize the killing of babies in the Constitution. There is no authority that gives any of this stuff. And yet, my people in my district, my voting district, are counting on this money to be able to have health care. It's not government's job. And we're a very generous people. Churches get hundreds of billions of dollars donated to them. Churches need to step up their Christian role to help people in need. But this idea of taking taxpayer dollars and allowing infants, preborn infants, to be murdered, all of these kinds of things are simply a shifting of values based upon
changing the affairs of the nation, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be sad once this comes to fruition. Now, they say that the pressure is on the Senate side. It's H.R. 1834, H.R. 1834. They say it's a shell bill with extraordinary broad jurisdiction. It touches nearly every major committee. You see, in plain English, ladies and gentlemen, Republicans were asked to vote in blind trust of Democrats. They did it, 17 of them, and they triggered this process without even knowing what the final bill will say or be or do. They say it was verbal assurances from Democrats and nothing more. For decades, pro-life voters have worked towards a clear, immovable line. Taxpayers must never fund abortion. Okay? But once you get abortion funded by national health care, you will never be able to stop it, folks. Okay? It becomes the vehicle for murder, for promoting abortion. Okay? It doesn't matter how they brand it, how they sell it, what they call it. Okay? In January, President Trump released an executive order reaffirming the Hyde protection, making clear that abortion is not health care and should not be funded by taxpayers. Okay, but now they're basically cutting deals, twisting arms. Folks, the fact is we need to relegate failed Obamacare to the dustbin of history. But instead, we're adjusting the curtains on the Titanic, and we're getting ready to go down if we're not very careful about this thing. I don't mean to be so negative on it, but I'm just telling you, this is disaster. The very ones who said they were not for Obamacare, the Republicans, now in enough mass, literally, they're going to make Obamacare happen. The Senate will cave. I wish they wouldn't, but they will. Because right now we're about to face, again, another government shutdown. Right, Doctor?
Well, we are, and the big problem is, well, there's a lot of, I can't even enumerate them. The Congress has been asleep at the wheel of the switch. They've been on vacation for a year or whatever, but here they've passed a lot of Trump stuff, and Trump stuff. You know, you talk about what the Democrats did with this healthcare bill. They were long on promises and short on details. Well, Trump does the same thing constantly. I think the Congress needs to grow a backbone and say, we're going to put this in writing. We're going to vote up or down based upon a clear understanding of what this is to bring about. And instead of these euphemistic, broad brush kinds of, whisper campaigns that allow things to pass, and then when they get actually codified, if you will, they're an absolute abomination. Trump does it all the time, but so does both parties. And I think that, again, we are led by lessers, and it's time for everybody to grow a backbone, including the people, and say we're not going to put up with this idea of codifying in taxpayer dollars in a healthcare bill the idea that you can kill preborn children.
Well, and to me, what needs to happen here, they claim, oh, man, these Democrats, these Republicans just bypassed Mike Johnson. And look, Mike Johnson has been a problem from the get-go. He hasn't appropriately moved forward bills. They're sick of Mike Johnson, and they're ready to dismiss him and sideline him. Sadly, I say justifiably so. Now, I think they're doing it for the wrong reasons. They're doing it to promote the wrong legislative realities. But nevertheless, what we need to do, folks, is make sure we understand who these Republicans are and who these Democrats are who are promoting Obamacare, illegal government manipulation. As you highlighted at Bastier's The Law, they're just literally making illegal things, quote, legal, wrongfully so. They're immoral, and they need to be stopped. But we need to, in the 2026 midterms, every one of these people that voted for this should be gone, Doctor. Absolutely gone. Well, indeed, and I would expand that list dramatically beyond those 17 people. Well, I said, and the Democrats that voted for it, right? Well, absolutely. But it's beyond that, too. I mean, you think about what kind of backbone did Utah's representatives? We got 4 Congress critters in there. Not one of them was on that list that supported this thing. But what did they do to get in front of that steamroller? Were they like that Tiananmen Square kid that stood in front of the tank and says, it's not going to happen on our watch, and here's why? I mean, these people need to quit going along to get along, and that's... Yeah, it's good they voted against it so they can claim they did, but what they need to do is stand up and hold a press conference. What they need to do is come on, radio programs and TV shows like Liberty RoundTable Live and explain, hey, we're against this, and here's why. But see, I don't hear a peep from them, really. Do you? No, it's crickets. It really is crickets from on the most momentous kind of things that are happening. We get crickets, and then when somebody does spend like a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Massey or a Rand Paul or whomever that says, no, wait, look, I'm with you on this stuff, but I can't on this stuff. Suddenly, Trump is going to primary him. He's going to make certain that they can't hold office again, and it's kind of like, no. His personal loyalty list is more important than the oath people take to the Constitution. And we've seen so many times in this program how people try to spin some kind of position into something that has to do with the Constitution. Virtually none of the times can you make that connection if you're on the side that's trying to say, oh, we've got to be a kinder, gentler nation. We've got to have health care for all. We're going to make certain that everybody gets an education. A kinder, gentler nation would leave health care with the Christians and health care with the private sector, because that's where they'll actually get real health care, not political gerrymandering and manipulation and everything else. Folks, we need to relegate Obamacare to the dustbin of history. But the sad part is we're basically adjusting the curtains on the Titanic all the while. The ship is sinking, folks. Look, America cannot afford this stuff. We're already involved in too many, steal from Peter to pay Paul scenarios with Medicare, Medicaid. They say you can't touch those things, but we're about to pile on debt after debt after debt that we cannot afford, that's blatantly unconstitutional, that if we're not very careful is going to destroy the Republic. And sadly, when that all happens, usually civil wars at the end of that, or tyranny. Take your pick. I'm not a fan of either. We need to double down and support the supreme law of the land, the Constitution. We need to do it by a clarion call for civility. We, the people, do have the authority. What's necessary is we need to stand our ground. Doctor, thank you so much. You guys all have a great week, and keep the faith, baby. Amen to that. freedomsrisingsun.com. Check out his collegiate series to preserve the nation. Sign up for his weekly webinars on Thursday. They're incredible as well. Q&As on the Constitution and more. I'm Sam Bushman. We are syndicated by the Loving Liberty Networks. LovingLiberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save the Republic of the United States of America.